but we wish him well, and we miss him every day. Okay, thanks. My printer skipped a sheet. So, our first item of business is the approval of minutes of the regular board meeting from May 15th, and then we have work sessions that follow the meeting, and we had a work session on May 30th also, and that was a budget work session. So I'll entertain a motion, and ordinarily the chair does not participate in motions, but when we're shorthanded, I'll be participating in motions. So go ahead.
So moved.
So it's been moved that we approve the minutes of the regular board meeting and work session, and I'll make that. I'll second that motion, and then with that, it makes it unanimous, and that carries. That item carries. Next, we have an item from our engineering department regarding a contract with Speedy and Associates. Okay, that's fine. Our assistant county engineer, Eric Engel, is here to present that. Speedy and Associates, they do soil testing for construction projects and paving projects.
Yep, good morning. Exactly like what you said. So this is just a contract for an hourly contract to provide those services on our projects. Specifically, right now we're working on the Cottonwood Wash low water crossing, so they're going to be helping us with testing concrete and such. So
they are a statewide and possibly a nationwide firm. Their rates are per test, so it's kind of an open-ended contract. As depends on how many times we need to call them and obtain their services. But any discussion?
None here. Make a motion to approve the proposal rate schedule for Speedy and Associates to perform construction material testing services.
Thank you very much, Eric, and I'll make that unanimous, and that motion carries. Next, we have our Health Department Director, Brian Douglas, to discuss a Smoke-Free Arizona grant, the acceptance of that grant.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's requested the board approve an amendment to the Proposition 201 Smoke-Free Arizona grant. Beginning July 1st, 2023, the Smoke-Free Arizona grant will increase our funding amount for food establishment visits from $30 to $80. And then although our annual funding amount will not change, it will decrease the amount of visits made.
Very good. So that we will actually be receiving additional funding per visit.
Per visit, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's not to like about that?
Yeah, that's okay.
Any other discussion?
None.
Okay, and we're using the statewide taxpayers' funds well. We're not, we're not just spinning the meter. We're actually providing a worthwhile service for that fee.
Correct, we are.
Okay, very good.
Make a motion to approve the amendment to Prop 201 Smoke-Free Arizona grant funding for that amount.
I'll make that unanimous. I'll second the motion to make it unanimous. Next, before we go on to the next item of business, I wanted to recognize we have Jeff Larson from the Graham County Community College, Eastern Arizona College Board, and also we have Councilman Mark Vining from the town of Thatcher in the audience with us today. Next item of business is we'll have this presented by our county manager regarding the probation employee salaries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little back history that you're well aware of. In 2022, the legislature passed a bill that added a footnote to the way probation employees receive their salaries and the way the county receives their funding. Specifically, AOC had issues with the counties giving increases to their employees in all the counties, and then AOC having to fund those increases. So that became quite a debate. A bill was passed that basically said AOC would fund up to 2.5% of any increases issued by the counties. What we did last year, we provided the same increase to our probation employees that everyone else received, all our other employees, but we gave it as one lump sum, and basically said, we'll wait and see where this footnote language goes. And AOC indicated, as did the legislature, that there'd be further dealings on this matter. Fast forward to now in the 2023 session with the budget that's just passed, that footnote language was removed, which we're extremely happy about and grateful for, and appreciate our own Board of Supervisors for your efforts in pushing for that. And our voices were heard, and that footnote language was removed. So at this time, what our request is today is to return our probation department employees back onto our salary schedule. When that bill passed last year, we basically froze their salaries with the information that AOC would no longer fund any increases. So now that the footnote language has been removed, our proposal is to put the employees back on the salary scale, and not just where they were then, but where they would be today. So if that footnote language was never included, what we're proposing is that they go back to as if that footnote language was never issued, and they would be on the same schedule today as they would have been otherwise. The cost to do that is $174,912, but I will note that is funded by AOC, not the county. So with that footnote language removed, that cost goes back onto AOC, and our employees will be back on the scale that they otherwise would have been.
Very good.
Good.
And I appreciate our HR and finance departments and your efforts. Additionally, in trying to keep our probation during inflation, when everyone else was anticipating a raise and they weren't, we didn't hold them completely harmless, but we were able to kind of fill the gap, and that was great for morale and retention. And any discussion?
I agree with you, Paul. That was great for them. So I will make a motion to approve of the returning probation department employees to the 2022-23 Graham County salary schedule.
And I'll make that unanimous, also by seconding it, and that motion carries. Next, we have approval of an addendum to a community service agreement for the respite center here in Sanford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we have an agreement with the Gila Valley Samaritan Home to provide funds up to $250,000 to remodel a respite center here in Sanford. That project is going very well as it moves along. This request that we have in front of you is an addendum to the existing contract. It's a minor addendum. Our civil county attorney, Gene Ruff, noticed that we do have one provision missing in there, which allows the county to conduct financial monitoring and audits of that organization, which is required, and we certainly will do, but it was not in the contract. So this addendum just adds that language that the county is permissible to do that financial monitoring and auditing. We have, of course, worked this through with the Gila Valley Samaritan Home, and Sherry Brady has signed that addendum. So with that, we recommend also approval from the board.
Any discussion or concerns?
I just have one question. It has nothing to do with this addendum. When is the completion date for that respite center? Have we ever nailed that down?
I don't have a completion date. I can tell you where we're at with it right now. They have finished sheetrocking this week. They're scheduled to hang doors, trim out the building, and they're still working on the stucco. I still think we're at least a month or two away, so this will cross into our next fiscal year, which we have budgeted for and we anticipate. So I anticipate around August, though that I haven't confirmed that with the contractor or them, but that would probably be a pretty safe
Thank you.
date.
And for those who were wondering what respite center is, it's basically daytime services will be provided for people who are homeless, assistance with the opportunity for laundry, personal hygiene for taking baths, getting a snack, getting out of the heat or the cold, getting some social services, direction, counseling, and so that is something that the county's invested in, and as a partner with the Gila Valley Ministerial Association. The one comment I would make or question is in reviewing the addendum, I did not see a termination date. It looked like it was going to be in perpetuity, that we would have a look in, and I just thought that maybe after 5 years, since that was kind of if we had used CDBG funds, that our stewardship over the CDBG funds ended after 5 years. I was wondering because I don't want to be in their business forever.
Right.
Is there any way that we can revise that and have it terminate in 5 years?
Mr. Chairman, I can certainly look into that. The current contract does have, we did record the lien, if you remember, for the $250,000.
Right.
And after 5 years, that lien completely falls off.
Right,
So there
but we'd
really
still, if technically though, we would still be looking at their books long after that lien was done, according to the addendum, right?
I certainly don't think that's the intent. If you feel like we need to put that language, I'm sure we can add it, but I don't see why we'd have any intention of
I know what
offering
the
any
intent
audit
is,
to
I
any-
know what the intent is, but I just, it's the pale, cold pale ink is sometimes better than an intention. So anyway, that is, if that can be done, I would, let's do it. It's not a condition of approval today, but I think that they would welcome the termination after a period of time. Any other discussion on that?
No.
We'll approve it as presented on the agenda, but if there's an opportunity to do that, I'd appreciate that.
You ready for a motion? Go ahead. Make a motion to approve the addendum number 1 to the community service agreement between Graham County and the Gila Valley Samaritan Home for financial and compliance audit purposes.
Very good, thank you. Next item of business would be, we have an opportunity to present. It's been 3 weeks since we've had a meeting and opportunity to present activities. I'll give a very brief summary in the interest of time. We had a work session on the 17th of May with the Planning and Zoning to discuss the ordinance review, specifically the marijuana ordinance review in our Planning and Zoning manual. Then on Thursday, there was a SEGO meeting. We are looking for a new director. Randy Heiss will be retiring at the end of the year, and so we had about 20 applicants, and I sat in on the review committee. Later that week, met with Supervisor Gomez from Greenlee County regarding an economic development project, housing project that he'd like some assistance in contacting the tribe. The week of the May 22nd, there was a Rural Transportation Advocacy Council Board meeting that I participated in remotely. Then there was Economic Development Roundtable that was very well done on the 24th, and then we had a Eastern Counties Organization Zoom meeting, and that's for the environmental concerns that we have in the Eastern counties of Arizona. And then CSA County Supervisors Association Board meeting, attended that remotely. Things are winding down as the legislature has extended, but the budget is passed, and we've got some really good news for Graham County in the budget and Town of Thatcher. And then we had a work session for our budget on the 30th. That was 6 hours long. It's longer than I liked, but that's okay. We got through it, and there's lots of good news there. And then finally, there was I attended a Department of Liquor License and Control board meeting, and that's my report. Supervisor Howard.
I attended a few of the things you did, so I won't repeat them, but on the 18th, I joined a Zoom meeting, LPC, that's Emergency Planning Committee meeting, and 30th, of course, a budget session. And also I had the, I guess you call it, the honor to be on the 4th of July committee for town of Thatcher. If anybody's got any ideas what we can do, let me know, would you please? And then Chamber of Commerce on the 31st had a graduation for their leadership program, which was really cool thing for me to attend because I had the opportunity to present a certificate to a young man that was appointed to West Point. And I had the opportunity to help him get that appointment through Juan Ciscomani's legislative office back in Washington. And I've said this once before, it's one of the highlights of my short career here at the county to see a young man progress the way he has and what he's going to do for this valley. He's going into the medical field in the Army, and he will be, he told me, he said once he gets out and gets out of the services, he's going to come back to the Gila Valley and give back what the Gila Valley gave to him. So that was just a great opportunity for me to do that, and I take great pride in helping him do that. Then on June 1st, attended the health fair here. And on the 2nd, I had the opportunity to meet Senator Jay Kaufman from the state and visit with him quite a bit. And also with Gail Griffin, I had some great conversations with her about our water situations. And you hear a lot about AMAs and things like that. And she's totally against AMA. And I asked her if one of these times maybe we could get her or some liaison from the state to come up and tell us and educate the people of Graham County what really an AMA is, because I certainly don't know all the ins and outs of the AMA. I'm sure many of you don't, so it's important we stay upon that. And then I also attended a state transportation meeting on the 18th as well, and then traveled to South Carolina for my grandson's graduation.
Busy time.
Busy time.
Okay, and now to our county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple projects that are underway and going still out at the fairgrounds. We continue with our CDBG project, which is they're at the stage where they're waiting for the delivery of the rubber tiles that'll go under our playground equipment. Our own staff has begun installing the drinking fountains, and all our ADA sidewalks are complete out there now. We're also working on an awning at the snack bar that is close to completion. We're re-roofing our gazebo out at the duck ponds. Our very large painting project at the fairgrounds is about 60% done, and they're about 5 or 6 weeks into that. I reported on the respite center, which continues to click along. Eric Engel mentioned our Cottonwood Wash crossing on Klondike Road. They began that project last week. There is a bypass road in, and they're working right now on installing the culverts that we provided for that project. Also, I'll just mention the budget again. Thank you, board. That was a long 6-hour budget meeting, but very fruitful, and we appreciate your support and help. Our next budget hearing will be on June 14th. We received a lot of feedback and follow-up that we are working on, and hope to be ready for you in that meeting. We will be. I was also going to mention our district number 3 supervisor. As you said, Mr. Chairman, packets are due on June 15th, and I'll just add that the board will meet on June 26th to make that appointment. Just a little report on the 4th of July fireworks. As you know, we are a partner in that event. The city of Safford, the town of Thatcher, Graham County, we all push in funds to make that project happen. The Lions Club is sort of the champion of that. There is a shortfall this year, and I am meeting later today with the Lions Club to see what we can do about helping them with that shortfall to make sure we have a good firework display show for 4th of July. Lastly, I'll just mention our chip seal project, which went for about 5 weeks, a little longer than we hoped because some rain delays in May that we didn't expect. But it was a very successful chip seal season. We were able to complete Lebanon Loop, Cactus, Thunderbird Mobile, Safford Bryce Road, from Ray Lane to Eden Road, Bryce Road, Olive Bryce Eden, Hot Springs Road, and the Fred Webb Park subdivision. I'll also add that we actually we built 2 new roads, 47th Street and 12th Avenue, and we'll add those to our list of paved roads or chip sealed roads in Graham County. And I just wanted to thank the Highway Department. They did a very good job on that, and we're happy that chip seal is over and we'll get back on our graders and grading our 480 miles of dirt road. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I would note some of the fairgrounds work, that most notably, you'll see the exterior, the painting, but underway is to turn the 4, what we have exhibit, they're intended to be exhibit halls. They've been barns for ever since they were built. They're just barns, and they're insulated and some additional lighting and some fans, and so we're doing more, and we hope that the community will benefit from that, and that this year's fair, that exhibitors and visitors will see that there's definitely been an investment and interest in making that a much better place. We need to approve the demands and handwritten warrants. That means the bills that the county has and the request for payment, and that is a statutory requirement. So I'll entertain a motion that we pay our bills for the month.
So moved.
I'll make that unanimous, and that carries. Next, we have a call to the public, and that is an opportunity above and beyond what you have for the different zoning hearings. So if you haven't signed in, you can come and address the public and then sign in on your before you leave. Just give your name, and you've got around 3 minutes if anyone has something to address the county with. Okay. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go into our 9. This is, I think, the most we've ever done in a meeting. We have 9 rezoning requests, and that is indicative of the county growing. And if any of you have teenagers, that awkward period where they become gangly and they have growing pains and awkward, we're kind of in that area. We're in that awkward, painful part of growing the county. And we'll preface the Steve McGoy's presentation with that, and also just wanted to let the public know that the decisions that we make are not made lightly. There's a balance that we have to between personal property rights, free enterprise, and your right to own and hold property and to develop it. And then we have to, but you're not on an island. You're part of a community, and then we've got to balance the greater good of what's the greater good for the community as far as, and there are a number of criteria that we use to say, is this going to be beneficial to the public at large? And so that's how we weigh these things out. We don't do them lightly. We are concerned about about people's well-beings, both property owners and neighbors and residents. So go ahead with that. Steve McGoy, thank you for your presentation, and he'll provide a map as we discuss each of these areas. Our first, and what we'll do is we are leaving our board meeting, entering a public hearing, and the first item is a zone map request by Cody Ennis. Is that correct on your agenda?
Correct.
Okay.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Our first rezoning is rezone 875-23. It's parcel number 105-45-086H. It's just under an acre and a half. The request is to change it from the current A zone to multifamily residential for the purpose of developing multifamily units. The owner and requester, Cody Ennis, and I don't know if he or I think his wife presented last time.
Could you interrupt your presentation long enough to enlarge the map and put on the county zoning for that area? And highlight the parcel if that's possible.
Okay, this is the parcel, that's Highway 70 next to it. I'm gonna back out a little bit, if I'm smart enough to. This parcel is in Central, and let's see if I can show you the parcel without that in the way. This parcel is owned by the Ennises. They just bought it from Henderson's. They also own this piece here, which I don't know if I can, which this is their legal access to the home and also the legal access to this at this point. There were some questions from neighbors about whether they would be forced to allow Mr. Ennis to allow them across their property to get to this, which is not something that can happen. I spoke with Susie Pouzis at the state, and Mr. Henderson put a pipe in the ditch about right here. And it's, I've got one. He's been coming and going right here, but she says that's not been authorized by them and would be quite the process because they don't want buses stopping on the highway for kids there and everything. So they would prefer that we use Shiflett Avenue for the access to that. That was the biggest concern from the neighbors. There may be somebody here that wants to speak to something different, but at this point that they want to put duplexes, triplexes, something on there, and their limiting factor is gonna be their septic. I would say on that acre and a half, they could put 3 large homes and septic, so about the same fixture count or the same amount of bathrooms would be allowable. But that is what's gonna stop them from getting too big, is the fact they have no city sewer.
Very, very good. And could you give the recommendation and any discussion that, and any opposition that you've received? I note that we've both received 2 letters of opposition on several items.
The only people I heard from in opposition were afraid that it would impact they were thinking that they would have to allow access across the parcel to the east here, which is not the case. The access would be from up here. The board or the commission voted unanimously to pass this on to you with a favorable recommendation after hearing all the neighbors.
Can you zoom out one more time and show the zoning? Because there was a concern about that would be the first multifamily resident zoning in Central, and it's traditionally a 1 acre per residence. And the red is commercial, correct?
The red is commercial, that's the central storage units that Johnny Ferguson put in quite a while back.
Okay.
And there's where your parcel is. The green is MX, this purple is a residential, smaller than 1 acre. The purple allows for smaller than 1 acre lots. Everything that's clear is 1 acre minimum, A zone.
And now we'll like to hear for anyone who's in favor of this from the public who would like to comment on this, and seeing none, and anyone who's opposed to it. And that leads the supervisor's deliberation.
Steve, where are they proposing access at now? Coming, I hate for you to have to keep zooming in and out. I think that's-
They live on this parcel, and it goes out to Shiflett Avenue. Sorry, I'm not better with this, but as you can see, it has a pretty wide, I think it's in excess of 30-foot access there.
So there's not a problem with that?
Correct.
Okay.
It's bigger than our minimum requirement.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have on it. Paul.
Okay, well, one of my, part of the balancing act is that we, our county has a housing deficit. We have people on long-term waiting lists. The mine has indicated that there might be 700-800 housing units that they are short of, and so notwithstanding the 1 acre density, which has historically been in Central, the fact that there are the fact that there are there's commercial development, and there's nothing, I mean, that's a corridor, and you know, I don't know that commercial development is any more palatable than a multifamily residences as far as the business activity, the traffic generated, the just turning a little quiet area into a busier urbanizing section. And so the that's the balance. That there wasn't comments about viewscapes, and unless the people are violating the ordinances for maximum height, I don't think that that we can make any kind of recommendation based on view, because it was within the planning and zoning rules and regs that are already established. So do you have any other comments on that?
No, no.
I'll go ahead and you know, kind of agonize over the concerns of the neighbors, but the fact that they're taking access off of Shiflett rather than the highway, that's to me, that's positive. That's a mitigator, and the fact that we have such a need for housing, and housing that's not as the typical one acre ranch style, you know, $300,000-$400,000 home. So go ahead, Steve. I see you.
I was just going to say that the purple areas there are half acre, and basically it would be the same
That makes my
allowance as far
Okay.
as, I mean, based on septic, you can have the same amount of people on those half acres as what he's asking for, and in the purple would be the same.
Okay, well, that makes my decision even easier. So I'll go ahead and move that we approve the rezone of this parcel for Mr. Ennis, and that would be parcel APN 105-45-086H.
And I will second it.
And so that carries and is approved. Next, we have a feedlot out south of town. And we do have someone here, the Solers family, who are farming that area and are good stewards of the land. They're asking to be able to add to their operation by putting in a feedlot.
It's got attitude this morning. Okay, this is rezone number 876-23. It's a portion of parcel 113-03-029. This is a 10-acre piece is all we're asking for. It's not the entire parcel or any of the hundreds of acres surrounding it. This is something that we asked the Solers to do. They came in to get a permit to build a barn where they've already got some feedlot and to expand their feedlot, and we thought it pertinent to put it properly zoned based on a couple questions from the neighbors, like, can they do that? And so we thought, well, let's give the neighbors a shot at it if they don't want it there. This feedlot and barn will pretty much take up that 10 acres, and there won't be, I don't think they intend to do anything else there, but we thought it best that they go ahead and get the zoning prior to spending all the money and then finding out their neighbors had a problem with it. So she's here to answer any questions if you have any, but that's the basis for it. We asked them to apply for this, and they said sure.
Before we hear from Ms. Solers, the fact that the only acceptable zoning for a feedlot, because it's commercial in nature, would be to have it MX. And because of concerns about, well, just mine, and certainly not the Solers family, but maybe their heirs or people who, successors who buy the property, once we have it zoned MX, then it's one thing to have a feedlot, it's another thing to have, there's a number of heavy industrial activities that can occur there. We don't have any way to reel that back in, do we, once it's zoned MX?
No, not really, unless you want to put a stipulation on it now. I mean, they have no intentions of doing anything else there, but like you said, if it sells but we have 60 parcels out there in the county that are zoned the same thing, and there's nobody doing anything nefarious on them.
Okay.
I don't really see it as an issue.
Well, unless the Solers family, I would think it might even be close to limiting or prohibiting and maybe even financially restricting what they can do with the property. I'm hesitant to do anything other than if they choose to do that themselves, but otherwise I don't think that I can require it from or that plan to require it from the dais.
That was mentioned in the planning and zoning meeting, that we say that if it tried to turn into something else, it'd be reverted back, and that's not something you can do. So,
understood. Well, that's just a concern. So, thank you. So we'll go ahead and Lori Solers, if you'd like to make a presentation on behalf of your proposal. Yes, if you would, please. Thank you for being here.
Hello. I just want to state that this feedlot is just going to be used like maybe 4.5 months out of the year, just when we bring our calves in off the cow and wean them and vaccinate them. And we do that in the spring and the fall. And so it won't be a year-long thing. Mm-hmm. I just want to state that.
Well, thank you.
But it's a big, big help to us keeping our cattle together and doing what we need to do to get them sold.
Sure. Well, not only that, but the economies of having them all centralized and then,
Yeah.
and then the security of having everything in
Definitely.
one area, so.
Yeah, because we have cattle in Klondike and then cattle, here in Safford and Thatcher, so we try to bring them all in here so we don't have to travel to feed them and everything, so it's a big asset to us.
Okay, anything else?
I just appreciate you letting me speak and
Of course.
looking at it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone opposed to this? And that's, to me, that speaks volumes. The feedlots, sometimes there's a little odor, and every once in a while you get a fly or two, depending on how close you are. And so the fact that the neighbors have a level of comfort with the Solers and their operation and and the way they conduct their business says a lot to me. Any other discussion?
I think really this place, the name of feedlot really doesn't apply to it, but that's what we're applying to it. I think it's more of a workstation than it is a feedlot, temporary thing, and they're so remote. There's not an issue with this in my mind whatsoever. I mean, in the future, somebody builds closer, well, that's they know the lot's there already, so that's their prerogative to choose where to live, but I can't see the Solers ever doing anything with this property but other than ranching it and improving. If they've done nothing with everything they've ever done, they've improved to the highest, so I have no issue with this at all.
I've very, very roughly and poorly drawn in the 10 acres on the 80-acre parcel they're far enough from their neighbors that I don't see an issue.
No problem.
Very good. Ready
For a motion?
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the zoning change on APN 113-03-029, request to change the 10-acre section that's A now to MX zone.
Very good. I'll make that unanimous, and that motion carries. Mrs. Solers, thank you very much for that, going through this process. Well, we're almost a third of the way through with this. Go ahead, Steve, once you're up and
This is rezone 881-23, parcel 107-17037. It's about a half acre. Request is made to rezone the current A general land use to rural residential for the purpose of being able to split to make 2 half acres. I'm sorry, that's 1.0048. Make 2 half acre lots. The owner and requester, Michael and Rhonda Spinger, they're the last place going north on San Juan Mine Road before you get to BLM. And well, I say that, and then they own the parcel north of them too. They own this piece, but this is the piece that they want to split and put a mother-in-law's quarters on the bottom half of. And the reason they couldn't do that on the larger parcel was financing issues with their current mortgage wouldn't let them, well, they can't borrow money to build one on a place that's already mortgaged, so they're trying to split the one that's paid for and borrow money against that to put it there. Do you intend to move one of them's parents to that parcel? I don't see them here, so I'll answer what questions you have, or we had no complaints from the neighbors, no notes, no letters. Planning and zoning gave a unanimous favorable recommendation to this.
very good. And is there anyone here in opposition to this rezone? And no one in favor of it? I mean, it's not, there's no one here to speak for it. It doesn't mean there's not in favor of it. This is, to me, this is consistent with growth in our county. I don't know that you could get any further away from the center of town, and impacts to the general populace. That's being able to have a little family compound is especially as family members get older, is essential. And I would be in favor of this. Of course, everything is pending the septic, right? It has to, the septic has to perk, it has to perk and has to be feasible in order for these smaller splits to work.
They have verbal from Gavin that it'll work, but true, they have to actually spend the money and find out. But
Very good.
the zoning will be similar to the other purple you see on the map. Quite a bit of it out there.
Okay.
This is just a request from somebody who's wanting to help himself financially to help their family, so I have no opposition of this at all.
Okay. And so.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning of APN 107-17-037. Request is to change from A general use zone to rural residential zone.
And I'll second that motion, make that unanimous. Our next item, a general to residential multifamily from Mr. Palmer on South 4th Avenue in Thatcher.
Okay, this is rezone 882-23, parcel 104-39-174. This is a parcel up against the dam behind the radio station, south of the radio station. Recently, there was a split there of, I think, 3-point-something acres there that was acquired from Jack Pollock's estate. And they want to, they're building a home currently on the parcel south of it. One neighbor had a concern, and that was, could this duplex be sold in pieces? And we informed them, no, this is, a duplex is a single sellable unit. So they, even though they intend to live in half of it and rent the other half out, they could not sell it in pieces. And that's the only question we got from the neighbors at that point. Maybe somebody here now that wants to speak to it, but I don't know. Planning and zoning gave a unanimous recommendation to the board for approval.
A question, and there is there an easement for work on the dam? Because it's right at the foot of the dam, right at the foot of the slope of the dam. And if anyone was doing any repair work or any work at all, then they would have to encroach.
I'll defer to Eric there.
And down below, there's an easement there, so they couldn't build their residence right next to it and end up having to impact having their residents have to be relocated.
We wouldn't allow that if there's an easement there.
So that's something you'll take care of in the.
We see that in setbacks. We would
Okay.
make them have
If you'll make sure you look for that, because that would be the only concern, and the fact that well, I wish them well. I wouldn't want to move underneath the dam, but
I think the
I
only
wish
thing
them
that
well
will
in
go
their
back there
choices.
will be their septic systems.
So, okay.
No comments here. I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning request for APN 104-39-174. Request is to change present general use zone to RM multifamily residential zone.
Before I make a motion on that, can you pull back and show us access? Because access in that area sometimes has been a contention for that parcel. How would they take access?
Sorry, this is directly at the, let me turn zoning off. It's directly at the south end of 4th Avenue. Sorry, can't make it where you can see that parcel and the road too, but the intersection of 4th Avenue and 11th Street is right at this,
Okay.
there we go. And those
So they've got direct access.
are both roads that we maintain and chip seal,
Okay, well, no dust, that's good.
correct?
Very good. I'll go ahead and second Supervisor Vice Chairman Howard's motion to approve this rezone request. And that makes it unanimous, and that motion carries.
Okay, our next one is a special use permit, 23-01. Parcel number is 106-06086, and it's a request for a petting zoo, an occasional petting zoo. Let me get my parcel number in here.
And note that Mrs. Congdon is here, the applicant's here.
This is she works full-time and wants the ability to do this, once or twice a month, rent out her space for birthday party or something. I'll let her tell you what her plans are, but seemed rather non-invasive. Some neighbors had issues with access in and out of there, and wanted to make sure that her parking was on her property, and I think she's agreed to that, and we'll
Very
be able
good.
to facilitate that. But
Okay. Did you want to come and,
For kids, like to have a birthday party, they can come and pet the animals and milk the goats and things, and then have their birthday party. And like Steve said, I do work full-time, so it wouldn't be a 24/7 thing. I just want to do a special use and occasionally on the weekends and stuff when I'm off work.
very good. Yeah, any questions, Vice
No,
Chairman?
I think this is something that this lady has really tried hard to help our community and offer some things to children and other folks, maybe the disabilities and things to come out and enjoy a different environment. Animals is always good. She's been more than accommodating to the neighbors for different things and provided parking and different roadways from what I understand. So I just think she is trying to do something good for our community.
I had a question for you, Steve. Was the rezone request in response to the fact that there'll be some commercial activity there, or is it in response to the exceeding the recommended number of the livestock on a parcel? Or what is the genesis for the rezone?
It's kind of a weird deal. There's not a zoning that allows for a zoo. The word zoo just shows up in special use permits, so that's how we ran it.
Okay. And then as being a special use permit, it will, when the zoo is, if in the future the zoo is no longer there, or Miss Sollers, not Miss Sollers, Miss Congdon, if and when she moves or sells, then that special use permit will be extinguished. Is that correct?
Actually, special use permits are normally for things like cell towers and
Right.
things that stay there forever, so it doesn't automatically go away, but I don't see how it could not have to come back before this board if somebody else wanted to do it. I mean, it's specific to her and what she's wanting to do, and
Very good.
so it might still show on the record, but in order to actually do it, I think that a new owner would have to come in and go through this process again.
Okay, very good. Not that it's anything objectionable, but just wondering about the duration, the durability of the fact that it is a special use permit.
Yeah, a special use permit doesn't automatically go away though if she were to sell the property.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I will gladly entertain a motion to approve this special use permit for APN 106-06 086 for a petting zoo.
And I'm glad to approve that, and you can look for me with my grandkids at some point in the future. They'll love and appreciate that, as well as other kids in the county. So next we are down to just a few. Looks like we're down to 4. And so the next item is in request to a rezone for an RV park from Ronald and Janice Howard. And this is on Ray Lane. And I believe I have four people here to speak, requesting to speak on this.
Okay. This is rezone 877-23, parcel number 105-32010. It's the greater part of a 40-acre parcel. Request is made to rezone from current A general to RMH, residential manufactured home, for the purpose of developing an RV park. Requester is Ronald and Janice Howard. Property runs along both sides of Ray Lane and south of Marble Lane. This is one of 2 requests for basically the same thing in the same area. And because they were applied for separately, we'll deal with them separately. But the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that you limit the spaces to 60 between the 2. And once they do their traffic study and their floodplain study and stuff, then they'll know better where that 60 units can go, whether it be 320s or 230s or however they want to pull this off. But that was the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It was unanimous that they didn't say whether this one could have all 60 or the other one could have all 60, or whether it be how it be mixed up, but they asked that you limit it to 60 RVs, which is what the applicant stated in the thing is the maximum that they would even consider doing. And so this parcel actually goes over onto the east side of Ray Lane, but not wide enough to actually do anything with. So the majority of this one is on the west side. They will have to do extensive study to find out where the floodway is, and they cannot do certain things in the floodway, septic, and I'm not sure what all. I'll let Eric tell you if you have questions about that, but I don't know if they plan to be here today. I don't see them, but go ahead with your questions and we'll go from there.
Sure.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Steve, which parcel are we talking about?
Can you enlarge
this
it just a
time?
little bit? And maybe you can turn off the layers on the left. Give us a little clearer picture. The layer.
This one we're on right now is the one probably west of Ray Lane, correct?
If I've got them in the right order, yeah. Yeah, this one is the one that's west of Ray Lane. Like I said, there's a small portion of it that's east of, but it's really not probably because the road's not on the section line.
And this request is for both of them in the outlined right now, this first request?
Yeah, that's actually a 40-acre parcel, but it has some floodway going through it that cut it up. I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
At some point,
Okay.
that became not theirs. I don't know how that works.
My question was this, was the density a stipulation, or is that just a recommendation from the P&Z Commission?
That was a recommendation that you put that stipulation on the zoning.
That we put the stipulation on?
Yes.
Okay.
And the owners agreed to that in the meeting. They said they had no intention to go beyond 60 units. They just
Okay.
didn't know where they could fit them until they do all their studies.
60 units for the entire 2 parcels? Or
Correct.
60 for just what we're looking at now?
60 between, the motion was made during both rezonings to limit them to 60 units between the two, between both rezonings. But because it was applied for in two, they could have applied for this all as one, and then it would have been a little easier to deal with, but yeah, 60 units on both parcels.
And another question is, is the requirement for both a flood, or a drainage study and a traffic study, are those requirements? Because I know that the county can, but it doesn't necessarily, I don't think there's a shall, but are those both inherent with this application, or is that stated clearly?
They were told in the meeting by our engineer, Michael Bryce, that those would be required, and that's basically when they said, you know, until we've done those, we don't know where we want to put these, so that's why we ask for such a large area.
Okay.
But they don't intend to use it as, I mean, that big of an area.
And we had opposition at the previous meeting, I've heard secondhand. And can you say why the board recommended unanimously to approve it?
It's housing that we direly need, I think, is what it came down to. And the fact that the zoning would have allowed for 200 or 300, but when they said we only want to put 60 maximum and we're going to do it in phases, I think they'll do 20, and then if it fills up, they might do another 20, and if it filled up, they might do a third 20, but it may never get off the ground once they do their studies and find out how hard it is to make traffic and make floodplain work there too.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the public. And anyone who would like to speak in favor of this rezoning, even though we're going to, you know, with the exception of the parcels, the
One to do for the expense to begin with, but the one to the east, southeast, I guess, would be further away from the folks. It'd be harder to get entry into, that's for sure. But my question, Steve, was there any discussion on or compromise on that at all?
Not really. The majority of the concern was what they were going to do for water and how it would affect everybody else's water wells there, and then the traffic. I don't want to say nomadic. Just the way that travel trailer parks are, you know, come and go, and you don't really have a resident, you have a tenant.
Well, the reason I asked that question is, and I'll be real upfront and frank before we hear everybody, that's my old stomping ground. This is like my old neighborhood sitting out here looking at me right now. But the one to the southeast is a lot less susceptible to flooding as the one that we're talking about right now. That was the reason I had that question.
Well, and that's why I think that the stipulation was given the way it was that once they do the study, they may end up with all 60 on one side, or half and half, or who knows, and until they get the zoning, they don't want to spend the money on the studies, and until they get the studies, they don't know where they want to put them.
Right. Okay, thank you, that's all I know.
Okay, we'll start with those who are here to speak on behalf of the request for rezoning. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and start with the last in and is first to the podium. Sharon, would you like to speak? And this is Mrs. Sharon O'Bannon, who's a neighbor, at least in the vicinity, lifetime resident of that area.
Thank you. So as most of you know that are here, spoke last week and told you last month when we were here, and told you what my concerns were. When I left here and I drove home, it was flooded. The top section was totally flooded. It went across the field, across the road, across Ray Lane, and down into that other field. There's several of us who are sitting here today who were actually there besides me and seen where that flooding took place. Some have already, I think, turned in pictures that they took. That's my concern for one thing, is that if somebody had mobile homes there or something, and getting those people out and their safety is one thing that bothers me. You don't have any warning. I mean, I had no idea when I left and came to that meeting that I'd come home and it'd be flooded. It just was. And another thing of it is too, about there, about when it does flood, and we have the wells and stuff that are down there, even where we're at, we're not in a flood zone, any of us that live over there. But where that is, if you have water that comes in and you've got septic tanks, things can happen. And I mean, other things could cause stuff, problems down towards the Pima area. We don't need that. And that's just what I wanted to say. I still don't support it. It was such a shock to drive home and see that. And I talked to several people that live over there that hadn't been to this meeting, and they were surprised. They had never seen it, never expected it, that it would happen. And I don't know who it was, why it happened, but it did. And I think you'll have some people here that, can support it, because there's quite a few of us here from.
Yes, we've got three other comments. Nothing better than a eyewitness, anecdotal information. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
No.
Vice Chairman? Thank you for your time to be here today. Next, we'll have Gary Allred address us. And then following him, we'll have Bailey Allred. And then Dan Welker will as the last registered to discuss.
I know that they had mentioned that several of these issues, the traffic, the sewer, and the water, will all have studies and testing done. One thing that concerns me out there has already been roads cut in, dikes built, and drainages that have been changed here in the recent months in this area that have had no testing, no engineering, no studies done on them. So it doesn't give us as residents out there a lot of confidence that these testing and studies are going to be done. Another thing that I'd like to address is talking about the housing need in the valley. I just don't feel like the transient nomadic housing is what is needed. Being involved in the planning and zoning in Thatcher, almost as big as need as housing is your forever home. You hear about people that are wanting larger lots. We have that. We have that way of life of not being stacked in on top of each other, being able to have animals and raise our family in kind of an agriculture setting with that being our forever home, the larger lots. This kind of zoning is not just a 60-unit zoning, it's being requested for 80 acres. Just to kind of put that in perspective, because we don't know what the studies are going to go. It may go in the favor of putting in more than 60. Just right here in Safford, there's an 8-acre RV park that has 100 units. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how many units can fit on 80 acres. I did pull some police reports over the last 5 years on 8 acres. There are over 180 police calls to that RV park with this type of transient housing. Most of those being theft and disputes, whether it's domestic or neighborly. That's concerning to us with young families out there, and having shops and barns and things that are spread out, how we're gonna have to lock things up out there. And It's been mentioned, there is no infrastructure out there, being sewer. This is being familiar with the area, similar lots that have had septic put in down in these floodplains. They're not leach lines, they're leach fields. It's a huge grid system, and putting this number of units is gonna take something rather substantial to accommodate this, there is no water. So it's very concerning what that could do as far as leaching into our drinking water that we provide for our homes on the domestic side of things. And the majority of this 40 acres is river bottom. It looks like they're asking to rezone the river to an RV. These are some of my concerns. I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm failing to mention. Strongly against this in our neighborhood, where we're raising our family in our forever homes.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich.
Gary, one quick question.
Yes.
When you talked about the police calls, was that for this last year, 180, or was that over the period, the duration of the park?
About 4.5 years, going back 4.5 years. That's 3 a month if you take in that time a month, just in that 8 acres.
Thank you.
That's the one there at the
20th
golf
and-
course
yes.
road and 20th. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you for your testimony. Bailey Allred.
Okay, so Wayne and I have lived on Marble Lane for about 7 years. We're just starting our family out. We have one little girl and hope to continue to have more kids down the road. You know, our road, Marble Lane, is a dirt road, and that is kind of a shortcut there from Ray Lane to Safford Bryce Road. The county does maintain that road, but it barely withstands the traffic that we already have. I feel like when people find out if they're going to Freeport to work and they're a tenant of the RV park, they're gonna be using our road a lot. We have a bus that stops at every house to pick up the kids, to drop them off and to pick them up. So there's kids out and about. That's concerning, to have an increased traffic. We also, our property values, I feel like our property values will decrease. And that's concerning when we've invested in our homes. And just like a clarification on this, I think planning and zoning, I don't know if there was, clarification, but this is an RV park, it's not a mobile home park, so it does bring in the transient and nomadic people. We have people that'll be there for short stints of time, a month or two, maybe working at the mine. Then that brings in people with criminal activity like Gary talked about, possible sex offenders. If somebody's here for a month or two, they're not gonna register as a sex offender here. No, they have an address in Phoenix or Tucson that they are registered to. So they're not gonna be required to do that. I know that there is for sure one sex offender in the mobile home park on 20th and Golf Course, and there possibly could be 2. But since they're not required to register, how would we know that? So that's concerning, having a little girl and it being right outside my front door. Not only sex offenders, but other criminal activity. RV parks aren't well lit. They're not constantly monitored. We're kind of a little bit more out of the way where we don't have a constant line of traffic, and maybe that people think that they're gonna be able to get away with more things. So burglary, theft, breaking and entering, drugs that could come with RV parks. The Howards did mention at planning and zoning that they think that they'll be able to gauge who they rent to. So I'd like to know, how is that? Are they gonna do a background check on people? Are they gonna run credit checks? How is that gonna be able to gauge who they're gonna have a spot for? And I know it's marketed towards Freeport employees, and that's great, but as long as somebody is paying their $300, $500 a month, they're not gonna care if they work at Freeport or if they're here from South Dakota or wherever they're coming from. So it's not gonna be just for Freeport Also, a comment was made by the Howards that they live and work out there. They do have farm fields, and they're out there in their fields, and they do have family that live down Ray Lane. But after 8 o'clock, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they're there till 8 o'clock at night working. They're not there to know what goes on all hours of the night, and it's not in their backyard. They go home to Thatcher, and they don't have to deal with it. They don't have to deal with the riffraff of the RV park. With that being said, the Howards have tenants, their employees that live on Marble Lane. They live in a blue trailer who have cars coming and going all hours of the night. They play music all hours of the night. I've had their tenants come and knock on my door asking for a ride into town after a domestic dispute. So that's concerning. When their employees and their tenants act and live like that, then what is that gonna say when they have 60 units full of people, how they will act and live, and that's not well monitored. Also, one thing that was brought up in planning and zoning is the chairman of planning and zoning promised us water. That water is gonna be brought to us. So I'd like to know if there are really plans of that. I know he's on the co-op board as well, so I don't know if there's plans of that. We would all like to know that for sure. And then the flooding issue, that's right. On the 17th, we got a good rain, which was much needed, and we appreciate the rain, but it did flood Ray Lane. I could sit at my front porch and I have videos of cars that had to slow down or cars that had to turn around because they couldn't cross Ray Lane due to the flooding. Trying to think what else. I think that's it. Any questions?
I could probably say about the water that you asked about. I have no knowledge of any water coming out that way now or any other time.
That's
So
what I thought.
to answer that question, I have no knowledge of it
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, and county's not in the water business, so
Yeah,
if the chairman must have spoken as a private citizen
yeah,
rather than representing the county on that issue.
yes.
Okay. Any other?
Bailey, excuse me, the trailer to the north of your home, police get called there quite often, correctly?
Yep,
Yeah, correct, I mean, excuse me.
yep,
Okay, still?
correct.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your clear, concise, and direct comments. Appreciate your participation today. Last we have, did you have a comment before we
I was
invite up
just gonna say, while your next person's coming up, go ahead and call them, and then I'll,
Mr. Welker?
I think what Chairman Larson was alluding to when he said that when you get a population, the services will follow. Meaning, if that grew up out there, then somebody would bring water or sewer to them, but he made it clear that it wouldn't be in his lifetime, and probably a lot of not. It might, he did say it might happen in his grandson's lifetime, but not in his. But he didn't make any promises.
Kind of feel like I can just say amen and sit down. Lots been said. Just to reiterate a concern with the 80 acres. I do understand that this is about business. It's nothing personal or anything, but it is about business. But it does raises a lot of concern. And with the 80 acres, I understand why they did that. I mean, they have to look at the floodway, and that's a new term that I found out 3 weeks ago. I've never heard that term before. Flood zones, you can, and floodways are definitely different. And there definitely has to be a study that's made. And sometimes I feel we got the cart going before the horse, that why don't some way we can get this study done, then we'd have a lot clearer way of looking at this. We have no idea, it's an unknown for all of us, of where that floodway is going to be. It might take out that whole area as far as we know. I don't know if you go with a 100-year event I've been part of those before. I don't know if that's what they're talking about when they talk about a study. Because when you do a 100-year event, you take down all your berms and all those kinds of things. They just go with the contour of what it was before. And then they do that 100-year flood, and there's no telling what could happen there. I mean, we could be saving the Howard's money by doing that flood study first and seeing where that water goes. But even if it just took out, let's say, 20 acres, and I think Gary mentioned this, that would leave 60 acres left that you could put trailers on. And as he mentioned before about the number of trailers down in the Safford RV Resort that they have down there, you're talking about the opportunity of putting a lot of trailers there, almost a small town in my opinion. And to me, I just have a hard time with that, having that many trailers, and I don't know how they were gonna deal with the traffic and everything. So that's just, you heard the concerns, that's part of my concerns. Like this is a big deal in my opinion, this study, to know what's gonna happen with that water. So I guess that's about all I have. You've heard all the rest.
Thank you. Very well stated. And we did receive, and I'm going to do my best to, Mr. Gabriel, is it Harike? Harike, okay. Very close. Not bad for a first time, huh? Yeah, no, it's good. Okay. He's going to speak regarding this and the trailer park rezoning.
Yes, my name is Gabriel Howdigi, and I live on 366 West Marble Lane. And we love the area out there and so blessed to live there. I just think a big concern is the flood zone, and it was irresponsible of the county to approve it before any testing was done, like the gentleman said before me. That was a very good point. But and I want to be honest about your question earlier, Paul, about why was it approved when there were so many people resisting it. I think that it was the people on up there before knew him, and it was kind of like a, yeah, we'll approve it deal. And so honestly, I think that's why. Why would you want to do that when there's so many people opposing it? Does the tribe need to be notified about septic testing being done upstream from in the river that feeds down there, especially in a flood zone? That's a question that we definitely need to explore. The environmental concerns for the tribal members on the res, or do they have a say? Should they be at these meetings or be notified of what is being planned? A big thing is our children and our family safety. That Ray Lane Road after the bridge, or all the way from the highway to Safford Bryce, is only 2 lanes. And after Norton Road, north of Norton Road, it's semi-trucks all the time, and it's only 2 lanes. And I dread, and when I think about it, it bothers me when even my wife leaves or any family members leave the house, that it takes literally a couple seconds, and there could be some very bad accident, irresponsible from driving from the semi or the person leaving, especially north of the bridge. There's a big curve. It's only 2 lanes, and I don't see, I guess there's a traffic study that needs to be done. Again, why wasn't that done before it was approved, or bring those studies to the table to help it get approved? Yeah, the road in the area is very small, dangerous trucks. Kids playing outside. I know that once people drive into the mine, learn that Marble Lane comes back out onto Safford Bryce. Sometimes they use that as a shortcut, and because you have to go north on Safford Ray Lane, and then you get Safford Bryce, and it sometimes takes longer. There has been multiple contractor trucks driving fast down the road, and I have 6 children, and I love for them to be outside because we live in such a nice area that I would hate for one of these days one of them to get ran over by somebody being reckless trying to get to work that doesn't even live in that area. That is definitely a nightmare. I know that this is a business opportunity, and that's definitely good, especially with the mine and it growing. But like Gary said about permanent housing, I think is what we're striving for here in the valley, and knowing that the Safford mine is going to be growing, because I do work there, it's going to be growing. There's going to be a bunch of projects coming up, but that is only temporary, and putting RV park in is just not, it's only going to be a temporary thing. And then after that, who's going to stay there? The kind of people that stay there. Even I'm worried about the contractors, knowing that when you not from here, you're away from your family, you're going to get off of work and want to drink. How many DUIs have there been at the county jail that are from contractors? Like, I'm sure it's a large number. And then on top of that, driving down the 2-lane road that's already dangerous. There's just so many fears that the people in that area with families definitely have. Yes, and I remember him, the builders or the owner saying that, or the Howard saying that he's going to do his best to control the type of renters that that stay there. I don't see how in the world that's possible. I think it was just lip service to try to make us feel better. But if somebody's willing to pay rent and there's an open spot, I'm sure he's going to have it filled, regardless of the person. And then after maybe they make a mistake or the cops are called or they're causing problems, then they'll get rid of them. But that's already too late, in my opinion. Yes, and we did have a huge microburst the other day, and from north of the bridge, it's a curve, and it kind of curves down, like just a slow grade, and then right at right where it curves, where it says Ray Lane, right there, kind of where that box is, where the arrow's pointing, a little bit south even more. From there all the way to Marble Lane was flooded completely of water. I mean, just water. And do have a video and stuff, but it was just, and that was the evening that we had the meeting here. And it was like confirmation that it's made me feel good, like, okay, this is probably not a good idea. I don't know if the Howards put in an insurance claim for their fields for getting damaged by floods, because I know the crops aren't, all the crops that were there sprouting are not all there now. So if he did do an insurance claim on it, I don't know, but obviously then you want to put a trailer park there with a septic tank that could leak into the river. It just doesn't make sense environmentally.
You're
Oh, past 3 minutes?
well, no, I mean, you're well past 3 minutes, but if you can wrap up, that's fine.
Yes. And just last year, that whole area, bottom half, was on fire in flames. So it just, all of it burned away, though. But it's just funny how to see floods and flames, and you want to build something there. Thank you for my time. Sorry I went over, but that's it.
That's fine. Question?
No, I haven't.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Harake. It's I don't know if it's irony or whether it's the actual best possible outcome that we have 2 zoning requests for a RV park from the Howards, and then we are following up with 2 zoning requests for RV park from the from Mr. Layton. And so it's makes it doubly tough as we deliberate to, how do you receive equal treatment under the law as, you know, the only thing that I can, and haven't heard yet the Layton request, but the one is there's a big difference in the location and a big difference in the impacts. And so I guess it's our turn to deliberate. I would make a comment, though, with all due respect, you know, Mr. Harakay, the Planning and Zoning Commission, they serve without any compensation. They take the arrows and the slings and the criticism just like we do. And you know, when you live in a small valley, you would say, well, you know, everyone knows everybody else, and so there's that potential for bias. But I think that in taking the high road, I think that they try to disregard that personal bias and do the very best that they can. And I would feel awkward if someone were to say that that's how we make our decisions based on who we know, not what we know or the situation. But that said respectfully, just to defend them, since they're not here. They do great work for us, and we try to be very, very objective. So anyway, that's all I have about that. And then Mr. Howard, Vice Chairman, do you, isn't it, talk about irony, you have the same last name and you're related.
So I can recuse myself, right?
Well, then, I'm afraid without a quorum that we'd be in a, you know, I'm not a quorum.
This is a tough one because I like I said, I know everybody on both sides of the coin, but you have to throw that out. I look at this kind of decision kind of like a judge on a bench. You have laws and you have ordinances, and whether you agree with them laws or them ordinances, you have to judge by the law and what goes by the ordinances and in compliance. That's one way I look at this. But that being said, too, there's a lot of issues on this that I may have a question or two here for Steve, as well as that has been brought up concerning the tribe. That part concerns me, and also the conditions of septic and tanks and systems. There's a 30 unit, I guess you'd call it, limit before ADAQ comes through, or 3,000 gallon system for ADEQ is involved. So you could put 30 or 27 here, 26 here, 26 there, and ADEQ would not be involved to get some sort of study through how they feel. But once you involve ADEQ, then that's a whole different animal there. So, and then there's questions on floodways and floodplains. And I discussed this with a couple folks today. A floodway, who determines a floodway? Eric, do you have who determines a floodway? To determine a floodway. And from what I understand, a floodway, you cannot put a septic system in a floodway whatsoever. So, as Mr. Welker explained to us earlier, that once you do 100-year study on a floodplain, the dikes, all that's removed, so you would study the course of the river, how it flowed during that 100 years. So that's a big concern to me on that, but we wouldn't know that until a floodway study was done. And my next question on a floodway is, how expensive and who is liable for that floodway? Is it the applicant? Is it the county? Who pays for the cost of the floodway?
The applicant will have to pay for that study.
How expensive is that study?
Depends on how deep it has to get.
Okay, and then so that was kind of all the cons, my issues in my mind. And I will have to say that I lived in that area my entire life until the last 8-9 years. That was my home, and I know everybody over there, which that is not going to influence my decision at all, I'll tell you that right now. But I have seen the damage that floods do over there, and Of course, it's not my money that's being spent to put this RV park in, so I don't have that issue on my mind. It's not my money, but that particular parcel that we're discussing, the first one of all the years I farmed, that was the first field that would get flooded by I farmed. It would come all the way back up to Ray Lane, and then if the flood would come in above it from the east, it would come and cross Ray Lane and go into that field. So that area, especially this parcel we're talking about, is really, really susceptible to flooding, and I don't know how you would keep it out. And then there's a, am I rambling on too much? I just need to say what I need to say.
No, this is explaining your position.
I've went through planning and zoning, and I've discussed this with a couple folks. It says no portion shall be subject to unpredictable and sudden flooding or erosion, nor the site be used for any purpose which would expose person to property hazard. Well, the trick to that whole statement is unpredictable. So yes, you can predict a flood coming down the Gila River, but you can't predict something that happened a few weeks ago. That was unpredictable. So this statement's kind of a double-edged sword on what you can predict and what you can't predict. So that bothers me for the safety of people in the trailer park. An event like that happened, I've never, all the years that I farmed over there, the other night was probably the biggest one I ever seen so quickly in all my life over there, and it was amazing, the damage it done, and you could not have got people out of there. Was it life-threatening to them? Probably not, but it was very damaging. So and then, okay, I've said all that, now let's go back to the other side of things. But I'm a big proponent of private property. People has property, and I know that the purchase of this property, a lot of this property that we're talking about is on non-decreed land, so it's virtually useless other than a travel trailer park. That'd be about the only thing that zoning would apply to get your value out of your dollar for buying that. That is a concern to me about somebody making an investment. But with that being said as well, when the property was purchased, the owner or the person that was purchasing knew what that property was. So I have to weigh that out too. So it's how bad you want the property. You pay top dollar for ground that's virtually worthless to get the rest. That was his decision as well. It's not my money. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. I'm really torn by this, and I don't know if this is the time to bring up what I said about the two different parcels that we're talking about. To me, the parcel to the south against the dike of the river is less susceptible to flooding, since we plugged that wasteway that came through the river that the water would get into there. That's less susceptible to flooding from the parcel we're talking about now. But it's worse for traffic getting in and out of there. So I'm really torn on this one, but that's what I have to say.
Let me, before we make a final decision, my dad always warned me about putting the cart before the horse. Just to address the fact that the engineering studies are lagging the zoning request, and that is that what's the $250? Is that what it costs for a zoning request?
Yes.
And engineering studies for traffic impact analysis and also then for the hydrological studies, the flooding studies, that those can both be well in excess of $5,000. And so it makes sense that you wouldn't want to spend the money if you can't get it rezoned. So I think that's why you see that as why those studies have lagged. And so he's invested $250, and the studies may show that it's infeasible. I am concerned about traffic impacts. Two things. One, that unless the mine eventually, because their activities are all to the east, but unless they ever move their mine entrance closer to the Safford Airport, that area Ray Lane's going to continue to Grow and Safford Bryce Road, both of them are going to be impacted. Whether you put 60 people and the average is 2 to 3 trips a day, maybe 4 trips a day, and large vehicles that with large turning radiuses, I'm concerned about, and that's what the traffic impact study will say is what the impact could be to Ray Lane, what they need to do, whether it's a center turn lane so that you don't get rear-ended pulling in and a turn bay pulling out, but the thing I'm most worried about, those are all impacts that you're going to see the same kind of right-of-way impacts as we discussed the Layton. Ray Lane's growing. It eventually, I think, will become a 5-lane section at some point in the future. The bridge is the choke point, but it's going to grow because the mine is going to grow. And so, how do we mitigate the impacts? Shoulders, and so that people, bicyclists aren't getting picked off, and pedestrians aren't getting picked off on a muddy shoulder. But the biggest concern, and I'll reference the RV park in Clifton. Back when it was flooded, they removed the houses, the last big flood they had. They allowed an RV park to go in, and it's right next to the river. It's really kind of pretty, scenic. But they have them on wheels so that they can pull them out. Based on the flooding, the pictures I saw, and knowing the soil, the high clay content for soil and for silt along the river, if someone had an RV and it had a couple of good rains that preceded upstream flooding, those vehicles, there's no way that those vehicles could be pulled out of an RV park if it was on gravel or on anything other than a paved road. And so that would be my concern is to address public safety. Property values, that's a tough one. And then the law and order, that's tough too. And we'd have to consider that as we look at other RV park applications. But the paving, and then to keep the people from pulling out anywhere they want to onto the highway, you need to concentrate them into one driveway. And so you'd have to have fencing and then lighting. These are all big ticket items, and the business model may not support those improvements that would be required in a flooded area. Not to mention what do you do with the drainage? Do you put a detention pond for the on-site drainage from the hard surfaces, the pads and things like that? Those are things that are yet to be determined. So as far as getting the cart before the horse, the concern is, do we slam the door and say, heck no, or do we leave the door open and say, okay, you meet this, and this, show us that it's not in a floodway, that you can handle flooding, and that you will mitigate traffic, and that you'll put the paving in so people can get in and out when it's wet. That may be enough to, not intentionally, just by necessity, may be enough to actually make it infeasible and make it unprofitable, and someone would say, well, it's not going to pan out. And so that's and as Supervisor Vice Chairman Howard was talking about the business model. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I would, if the board chooses to allow this to go forward, I would stipulate that there be commercial lighting at the opening, not just security lighting, but to actually have a street lamp and have it well lit, a couple street lamps, that there be fencing and that's a trick. How do you can't fence in a floodway, but you should still be able to keep the people from entering and leaving Ray Lane. The county, I don't know how much right of way we have, but I would also would want to require that their setbacks be sufficient, so that if we need 100-footer right of way in the future, that they're not building structures right up into the future right-of-way. And whether we obtain that through eminent domain, through negotiation or donation, but the right-of-way, lighting, fencing, and paving are all gonna be, would be my requirements, and that may be enough to make it unprofitable, but not by my intention. It's just public safety and accommodation. So that's kind of my position. But I haven't decided, and looking to you, because you're the expert, it's your district.
Thank you so much.
And it's your family picnics you've got to go to.
I have a question for you, Steve, on this, on the ordinance that we presently have right now. Does this request, are they in compliance with everything of this request? Are they complied to what is needed for a zoning change?
As far as I know, yes. They haven't done anything except move dirt, and we don't require a permit for that. So
Right.
at this point, yes.
So the process is, okay. You know, a lot of the comments I heard were very, very good arguments. The one up Marble Lane about traffic, that I've seen it with my own eyes. It's a dirt road. There's some very blind corners on that road, in a couple spots that I can think, 3 of them that I could think of, that I know accidents in the past have happened there. That's a concern. Traffic will increase on Marble Lane, no doubt, no doubt. Fast traffic. Sometimes you might not like what I'm gonna say right at this time, but there's some unknowns here that I really would like to know before I made a decision, especially about the floodway. But you say we have to pay for that, and about the tribe's position, about ADEQ, there's a way to get around that, to determine whether the septic system would get into the water system. I'm kind of doubtful on that, because most of the homes are above that area, and the wells are away from that. So I have a hard time thinking that the septic would affect you guys' water right where you're at, but it could. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but I have a hard time believing that one. But the floodway and the tribe and the splitting it up to get around things is problematic to me. Again, I would really like to know about how the tribe would be involved in this, but that's something we don't know, and we can't find that out today. So I guess it's up to us to make this decision. I have a lot less confidence that this is a good idea right at this point. With all the objections we have, there is no one here to speak for it. That concerns me. I would love to hear that, but there's no one here to speak forward. And when you have this many folks out here that's against it, it's pretty hard to say, hey, this is a good idea at this time.
Sure, and I don't think that there's any, in fact, I know there's nothing that would prevent, with more information, if they came back and requested rezoning and they had more information, although typically we you know, they don't even, lots of times have to have a site plan. They just say, we want to have it rezoned, but it would be atypical, but that could be a possibility. We say, if we're uncomfortable, say we want more information, we need more information, how are you going to do this in light of this, and this condition, and not slam the door and say never, but say not yet. But
I agree.
Anyway,
I think we need more information. I really do. I know that's not what you all want to hear out there, but I just don't think this is a decision we need to make lightly. I think we need to have more information on this thing, as this affects a lot of people on both sides of the fence.
sure. But we've been on this for quite a while.
I know, and it's very important, but.
Do you have a direction you'd like to take on this?
I know it's not required to get a site plan at this time. This is just a zoning change. And if we made the zoning change, then we would get the site plan, and then we would get all this information I'm asking for. But it's hard for me to say yes without that information. It really is hard. And I know they're in compliance with the laws, like I said about a judge. You follow what the law says. So if I follow the law, I'd say, hey, this is okay, we gotta approve this, but then it could come back and bite us as well. So this is a very difficult decision. I just wish we had more information on their intent. Like you said, you can't build a fence in a floodplain to prevent water. You build a fence across the front of that to detain water, you'd really create a problem. So you can't do that. Lighting is all great. At this time, I would move that we get more information before I make a decision.
So rather than, so are you asking to postpone a decision, or are you asking them to go ahead and restart the process and either denying the zoning request at the present time, but invite them to come back to the table? What's your preference on that?
Well, I don't want to inconvenience all these folks at this time. Oh, Steve has a comment.
I think Gene might have a comment, but also,
Do you see a need for that?
I think we have enough clarity. We just have to tread carefully.
let me just remind you that the commission asked for the stipulation of allowing up to 60 RVs without coming back through the process. Now, as Mr. Wilker said, there could be 200, but not with, if you pass the stipulation that they ask for, there could only be 60 between both parcels, not just the one you're dealing with now, but the next one too. And after studies that have to be made by, at the cost of the applicant, both the traffic impact study and the floodway study have to be done at their expense. And then they have to get past our people once they're done. So it does make sense that nobody's gonna spend that kind of money without the zoning. That's the cheapest part, but if they have to spend $100,000 to get all these studies done and then you say no, they're not even gonna take a chance. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to push one way or the other. I'm just trying to make sure you understand that we're only dealing with the west half or the west portion at this point, and that stipulation was asked for, but you don't have to put it in there, or you can change it, or you can put whatever stipulation you want.
I certainly don't want to close the door on this project for the individuals that's applying for it. That just isn't fair in my mind to do that to them. Can we put them conditions on the studies? And what I'm hearing, we can, for the traffic study, the flow.
No, that's not a stipulation. I mean, that's
law.
already part of the deal.
That's in our ordinances.
There's one part of our ordinance that requires an all-weather road,
Okay,
and there's the travel trailer park part of the ordinance says paved, 32-foot minimum.
Right.
So that's one other thing I wanted to answer. There's not gonna be a sugar sand road out there.
if I approve this, I want lighting, available lighting off that road, one way in, one way out, egress, ingress. I don't want them to just wildcat and go where they want to go. I'd like security cameras and water retention plan and pavement.
And if that's in your motion, then that's what we'll take to them.
That's the only way I would consider it. And that would give the Howards the opportunity to pursue their investment and to take it'd be their dollars that did these studies. That's the only way that I would approve this thing.
What is the price of human life? Okay, so you
That's fine. If you'll sign before you leave, and that way we'll have your comments included. Well, you know, and you do have the RV park in Clifton. FEMA funded it. Well, I know it's your backyard, but that's the common lament is our backyard. So, okay, I'm ready for a motion if that's your pleasure.
Like I just said, I feel like if we don't give them the chance to go on and do this, at their bucks, their dollars, I feel like we're not being fair to the process. So what my motion is like I just said, lighting, egress, ingress, security cameras, a water retention plan, and paved roads. And then I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, and would you would you be willing to make a friendly amendment in lieu of the possible fencing to have a swale or some kind of I wouldn't necessarily say a berm because of the flooding, but a swale to prevent the people from, you know, driving down. You know, it's just a dip that would keep people from entering Ray Lane.
You mean off Ray Lane coming?
Yeah, just along the frontage of their property so that they're not coming and going anywhere they want to.
Yeah, I'd be willing to say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know they do, but that I can't think of, and help us out after the meeting if there's a well, then the process will. Yeah, the process will I think will, as they work through it, they'll find if it's infeasible that there's no, unless they were to put all their family fortune in it, it would it may not be feasible. But we do have a responsibility for property rights. If people can add the mitigation. So I'd go ahead and I've spoken enough on it, and I'm concerned and aware.
We have Steve over here.
Yes, Steve.
Did you want to put the limit of 60 units on this or not?
Absolutely.
Okay, you need to read that into your motion then.
Also a 60 limits, 60 unit limit.
And we're talking about the parcel number 1053210.
Both. We're talking about both.
The entire project.
So we're going to take both
That
of
was
these.
that was the commission's
So did the commission
intention.
handle both of them together?
They did not, but they made that motion on both
Okay.
and said combined between the two zonings, they're only allowed 60 units without coming back through the process, showing us what you've done and letting everybody see it again if you want to get bigger.
Okay.
And
So we'll need to handle the motions independently then. But
you're going to have to go through this whole process again on the other parcel.
yes, yep. Not the whole process, but we'll the same motion, except for different parcel.
So
Okay.
did you get my motion?
Yeah, and so the 60 with the addendum of a 60 unit total. Question?
Sure. If you feel like it's needed.
Well,
absolutely.
it's actually the vote of the board. You move for,
I'll move to go to executive session.
okay. We think we'll be brief. I'll go ahead and second that motion and we'll go into executive session.
It's gonna be a bomb. It's gonna be a bomb.
We're waiting for our civil attorney. She'll be right with us. Thank you. We'll go ahead and reconvene out of executive session back into our planning and zoning hearing regarding our parcel number 105-32010 rezone. And we are not able to discuss what is proceedings of our executive session. That's protected information, but there is a need for us to postpone a decision both on this rezoning and the other rezoning as a result of a potential conflict of interest. And since we don't have a quorum with Mr. Vice Chairman Howard recusing himself, then I'm not able to make that decision, and you wouldn't want in fact, we can't do it without a quorum, so we're going to have to postpone a decision on these two parcels until the first week in August, when we will have another Board of Supervisor seated on the dais. And I believe, Mr. Howard, you'll recuse yourself on just this issue, is that correct?
Yes, on this rezoning issue.
Okay.
On the next two parcels, I have to recuse myself on this.
Okay, conflict of interest, and that's for the protection of our county, for Mr. Howard personally, and for the public. Conflict of interests are common reasons for people to abstain from voting. So we don't have a satisfactory conclusion for you today. We're kicking the can down the road for a couple of months, but I think that we've had a great discussion, great issues. There's been a direction that could change with another board member, but you've all been a witness to that. So we're going to then move on to anything else, County Manager? Was that procedurally correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Next, we have two other issues to wrap up, and that is a rezoning request for two parcels from A to a residential manufactured home, and from A to commercial manufacturing zone for RV storage and warehouses. So we would have our planning and zoning, and this is from Mr. Justin Layton.
Sorry, I got enough of those over there that I'm getting them mixed up. We are now on rezone 879-23, parcel 105-48-011D. And this is not really, it's a portion, it's all of this plus a portion of another parcel. Let me get this in here. This parcel will grow to be 400 by 400, basically. It will grow to the north, and this is a request. It's 405 by 400, and request is made to rezone the current A to RMH 4, a proposed RV park. Requester is Justin Layton. He owns the small parcel there, and he has power of attorney on the remainder of what we're rezoning right now. And his intention is to do similar to what the Howards wanted to do. The biggest difference being he's quite a bit smaller, and he has city sewer available to him, so there's no, and he's quite a bit further from the floodplain.
What is the proposed access?
His access, come on up. Just tell him what you're gonna do.
Thank you for your attendance, gentlemen, ladies.
My apologies, I thought this was RV Parks Anonymous meeting. Ingress and egress both from Ray Lane. The way it's drawn up would be, oh, there we go. It's about right here, and then again about right here, or the ingress and egress. That's capped because of the lot size. If I tried to squeeze every bit of space I could maybe get 33 spaces. I'm looking at probably closer to 28 to 30. Right around, so there is a existing trailer house right here that will, that I rent out, and it will be a part of this park as far as kind of management to help oversee it. And then right around this area, I'll have a small laundry service right there. I've already spoken with the town of Thatcher and the city of Safford. I can get utilities, sewer will be tapped right into Thatcher's sewer. Elevations are okay for that. City of Safford has approved if I could use the same meter right now and just enlarge it, then they're okay with, I'll just pay for the new meter and lay a new line. If, because of the next thing that my application is in, down the road, it looks like I might have to add an additional meter. Right now, the meter for this property is up at First and Ray Lane. And if I end up doing the second meter, they would end up moving this original and then adding a second down closer to the property. Flood control, I'm looking at right across from Ray Lane is the Ray Lane flood channel. And at the bottom of this field, well, this field, to give you a perspective of where it's at, just north of this field, the very bottom of it is the Thatcher sewage plant. There's already drainage there that the field uses, which goes under the road, and it goes into a agricultural ditch. In the short term, I would be using that. It's already what I'm using for my agricultural irrigation. But down the road, I think Stephen made the comment to me at one time, and it makes a lot of sense. I need to come up with a alternative plan in case it ever sells. At that time, what my intent, well, not at that time, but between now and then, what I'd like to do, and I've talked to Thatcher about this as well, is work in a way, and it would involve the county as well, but to go under Ray Lane and just bypass the agricultural lateral ditch and put it right into the flood channel for any flood retention. As far as this first application, the RV park, I think, I don't know, unless you have questions, I think I've kind of, it's similar to a lot of things you've just discussed. So if you have questions, I'd love to answer them.
Will both of the egress, ingress, will they both be the same? Will one be an emergency and the other be primary, or will you have kind of circulation pattern
It's a
so
loop.
that they're both be the same.
Yeah, it's a loop, and so the way it's, that I've kind of have the preliminary design is if you can come in one side and every slot is slanted, so you can kind of pull and then back into the slot, and then also pull out and just continue around. So it's one ingress, one egress.
Okay.
What about your lighting and pavement, Justin? Are you going to have chip seal type roads, lighting on your entries where folks can see that?
I hadn't gotten that far yet, to be honest. There's the only lighting that's there right now is there's one security light, about right there. That's all the lighting that there is at this time. But as we move forward, I mean, if it's required, I'll do it. I'm not against it. I just hadn't got that far into thinking of lighting.
Well, and can you address the other parcel while you're up there, and how that is
how they all kind of
how
match
they,
together.
yeah, how they work together, or
It'll keep- I
what
can
your
zoom
plan
out.
is for the two parcels, and if there's a synergy there or commonality.
So we're taking, in essence, this cutout right here.
Right.
We're gonna take that straight north. And so all this frontage, Ray Lane frontage, would become, the RV park would come out to approximately right in here. And then the remaining parcel, there's plans to do on the north portion right up against the sewage plant is to put warehousing. And then the middle portion right in here would be just RV storage, similar to what is out on 191, park a boat, park an RV, whatever storage. I don't have, the way it's drawn up, the way I presented to Steve, and with his help, we didn't necessarily tie in stone what these two parcels would end up being, but we approximated, because it might turn out that I'll do a few more warehouses and less RV storage. But then when it's when I know what I've got, then I'll come back in and not rezone, but then make a definitive legal description so that it becomes finite and separate from the rest of the agricultural field.
So with one is with warehouses and storage, you don't have the same traffic flow, but what will be your build out, or if you know yet, on the number of RVs? And I'm asking the question for traffic impacts on Ray Lane.
So are you asking the total number of build outs?
Yeah, what you envision as being the total number of spaces?
30.
Total, okay.
Yeah, and I just couldn't fit more than that in what my request is to designate. I have a little bit of leeway on the warehousing and the RV storage to move one way or the other, but as far as my request for the RV park, I'm limited to what I've already drawn up.
Sure.
and I'm capped at that. I cannot fit more than 30.
Yeah, I saw the sketch, so, okay. And do you know your parcel well enough to know how much right-of-way we have versus what your right-of-way, where your right-of-way line is?
On Ray Lane?
Yep.
No, other than looking at that, it looks like you're right. It looks to me like I own half of Ray Lane.
Okay. Well, with that, is your site plan, and until we negotiate or work through that, we can't direct or take or push, but is your site plan such that future, if we want the full, whether it's 66 feet or 80 feet, you know, whatever the maximum is, would you be building so that you would be in conflict with a future
No,
right-of-way?
I would be set back far enough that if the county came and requested to work a deal of some sort to have that be theirs, it would not interrupt or interfere with any of my building.
Okay, that's good to know.
I would primarily, I would get with Steve and find out what the max would be, just in case that happened, rather than say what the minimum is and then it turns out something different.
Sure. And do you have with the drainage pretty clearly,
Okay.
with the drainage pretty clearly established, have you had, other than these high intensity, short duration microbursts, have you had any flooding in that area?
No.
Or at the existing residence?
No, I have not at the existing residence. The only flooding that has occurred at the bottom of this field when those torrential rains come and you've got every row rolling water. It will top the road right in here and it will top right over there. Currently, I have a outlet to discharge irrigation water right there, and it goes just slightly west into a ditch here, which goes straight north to the Smithville Canal. But my intent would be, there is an existing, I have a pump right here, an irrigation well, and it goes under Ray Lane in a box culvert. What I would like to do once this is developed with the warehouses and storage facilities is continue to drain that water, tap into this ditch that runs along the sewer ponds on my side of the fence, and then go underneath that existing box culvert into the flood channel.
Very good, thank you.
I have no questions.
Well, as you were in our hearing, talk about treating people equally, from my perspective, there's a difference in location as far as the imminent flooding, but if we were in the future to approve Mr. Howard's request and require a hard pavement for him, then it would be difficult for us to not say we'd like to have some lighting, possible a fence and lighting at your interior, at your entrances, and fencing, and for at least your driveways to have at least a chip seal. So those would be the stipulations that I would be comfortable with. Probably would be a good idea to have a traffic impact study, not necessarily drainage, but traffic impact, just because, and I think that with the exception of turn lanes, and I don't know that 33 is going to, that's something that the traffic engineers will determine if there are any mitigations needed, or whether 33 units plus the occasional RV storage would require any kind of improvements. But those were, I guess, those four stipulations: lighting, paving your drive, and a fence so that people don't pull out onto the Ray Lane except at the your two entry points. You wouldn't necessarily have to pave the back or fence the back side, but I think it's important to fence the street side.
It would be three. I didn't say that, and thank you for bringing it up. It would have a three-sided fence. The back, the south side, and the north side would have a fence, and then the east side, the Ray Lane side, would have some sort of landscape or something. Obviously, it's not going to be fenced completely because that's the ingress and egress.
Sure.
And then there's also some park spots closer to that. But absolutely, the fencing was part of my plan.
Very good. Well then,
I agree with you 100%. I think lighting and paved or chip sealed roads is something that we'd have to require, and Yeah, the fence like he's talking about. He sounds like he's got everything covered on our issues, especially drainage, so.
The pavement and the traffic impact study are both required
Right.
already. They don't need to
Okay.
add stipulations.
Was there anyone in opposition, sent a letter or
There's one.
that you can recall?
Yeah,
There was one.
Yeah, there's one.
there's one. You should have one.
I
It
don't
was,
know.
it was a text to me the morning of the meeting, but I think I put it into an email and sent it to you.
I
can't
got
remember.
one phone call was all.
Okay, that person's not here, obviously,
It
so,
was the adjacent property owner, but.
okay.
Ready for a motion?
Yes, I would make a motion to approve this zoning change on APN 105-48011D and a portion of APN 105-48011C to change present A to zone RMH.
And I'll go ahead and with the stipulations,
With the stipulations of lighting, the other was already required, so that would be.
paving, okay,
That's already in.
and
there.
fencing,
And fencing,
and the traffic study, okay.
yeah, that's already in.
Very good. I'm glad to second that motion, and that rezone request is granted. And our last one is we've already talked a little bit about it. Any other discussion?
No,
We didn't, actually, I need to go back just for a moment on this. I didn't have call either people representing in favor of or opposed to on the first parcel. Is there anyone here for? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go to thank you for that, and sorry for that mistake. And then we'll go to the hearing on this last parcel. And Steve, do you want to give us a summary?
Okay, this is rezone 880-23. It's a northern portion of 105-48011C, which is the one that's up there. It's the east 400 feet of that. And with the exception of what was included in the previous zoning, this request is to go from A to CM zone for the proposed development of RV storage and warehouses. And Justin will go on with his presentation of that, and our commission gave unanimous support of it.
As we kind of tied a lot of the previous discussion with this, a question I have back for you is if you would require, or what type of requirement would you have in mind for ground, pavement, chip seal? My intent, I'll tell you, for warehousing and storage was just going to be like a gravel.
Yeah, and
I think that would be fine in my eyes.
Yeah,
For the storage and warehousing.
right,
yeah.
you don't have to have an all-surface road for storage, I don't think. And, lots of times that all-surface requirement, or all-weather requirement, not all-surface, all-weather, includes fire trucks and ambulances, and if you've got rutting and people can't get in and out, that's one of the reasons that we do ask for paving, so
Gotcha.
for public safety as well as the ease for and tracking of mud on and off the road. So that would not, I would recommend that we include that in the traffic study, just because you have the RVs, the frequency will be almost, one every 2 or 3 months, egress, ingress, maybe once a month for the number of units. So it'll have very little impact, but I would say let's include that parcel in the traffic impact analysis and your gravel roads. I can't see a reason. Your fencing and security lighting, I think that would be up to you as property owner, and that we wouldn't necessarily stipulate that.
Right, I agree.
Okay.
Agreed.
Very good.
Then just so you're aware what the rest of it would look like, the RV storage, as I mentioned earlier, the number of these units is gonna vary as I get going. But the RV storage would be running east and west. And then the warehouses are a 50 by 100 foot warehouse with a cement pad, pretty basic metal building, insulated, And then just the number of those kind of depends on, as I get going, which there's more demand for.
Okay, well, then, that would, as you get the information to the traffic engineer, then he would find out, you know, what traffic that might generate. He'll have to make an assumption, he or she.
And
Okay.
I'm sorry, one more thing that I forgot to mention is I will keep, this is a well-used agriculture road. It will not be a part of the entrance for the warehousing here. They will have their entrance separate from that so that that still maintains as an agricultural road.
Very good.
Ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I will make a motion to approve APN 105-48011C to change it from general use A to zone CM, commercial manufacturing zone.
Okay, I'll make that unanimous, and so that is also approved. Mr. Leighton, thank you very much. And for those who might be history buffs or genealogists, I would just note that Mr. Howard is very distantly related to even Mr. Leighton, but the conflict was basically in business dealings in the past, and if you look at the title history on that parcel for Mr. Howard, then you'll see Vice Chairman Howard was a previous owner, so that's the reason for that, so that we don't have an entanglement. So with that, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much.